It's time for America Outdoors Radio, the show that covers the outdoor scene across the U.S. of A. and the entire continent. Fishing, hunting, conservation, outdoor recreation, and great destinations. We cover it all every week. It's your country, your outdoors. Let's explore it together with your host, John Cruz.
We're starting things off today with some really good news about our program. It turns out we produce some pretty darn good radio. The Outdoor Writers Association of America, comprised of over 650 outdoors media professionals, just had their annual conference at Jay Peak Resort in northern Vermont. One of the big highlights of this conference every year is the big announcement of who won the annual Excellence in Craft Awards. There's 6 different categories for writers, photographers, and broadcasters who are part of this organization, and I entered 5 of them in the audio category, which is open to both radio show hosts and podcasters, and some very good ones too. So, how did we do this year? In one word, amazing. We took first place in the family participation category with an interview we did about Joey's Fly Fishing Foundation in Wyoming. We also took first place in the fishing category with our interview of Walker Smith with Wired to Fish about fall bass fishing misconceptions. Another first place award went to us in the gear technical category for our interview with Outdoors television host Steve Rogers about buying your first bass boat. And we took first place in the hunting category too, interviewing Will Brantley with Field & Stream about tag teaming turkeys. In addition to this, we also took second place in the conservation nature category for a segment we aired on our regional program, Northwestern Outdoors Radio, about the state of wildlife and watching them in Yellowstone National Park. The hunting category of this Excellence in Craft contest was actually sponsored this year by our friends at Henry Repeating Arms and is one of the many outdoors media professionals who entered into one of the many hunting categories. I would like to say thank you for providing financial support to some of us lucky award winners this year. If you want to find out more about the Outdoor Writers Association of America, you can do so by going to OWAA.org. That's OWAA.org. It's a great organization. Next year's conference is going to be in Casper, Wyoming. And if you're interested in becoming a member as an outdoors media pro, or if you're an aspiring outdoors writer, photographer, videographer, or broadcaster, contact me through my website at AmericaOutdoorsRadio.com. I'd be happy to have a chat with you about OWAA and how you can become a member. Now, I'd like to tell you, the reason I got those awards was because I'm so darn good, but let's be honest, it's the guests that bring this show to life, and this week on America Outdoors Radio, we've got another great slate of guests bringing some interesting topics your way. One of them is PJ Delhomme. He wrote a really good article that's in the current digital edition of Outdoor Life magazine about the tradition of fur trapping. Is this ancient pursuit going extinct in America, or is it growing? You'll find out in just a few minutes. And if you're looking to tag out on a buck or a bull this fall and you bag a nice one, you may want to get it mounted. Maybe a European mount featuring the skull and antlers. You can certainly take it to a taxidermist who will help you out with that for a pretty price, of course, or you can do it yourself. It turns out it's not that hard to do. It's not expensive at all. And Ryan Neely with Camp Chef, who has done this a few times, will join us towards the end of our program to tell you how to do it too. Next up on America Outdoors Radio, we're going to talk about the duck stamp. If you are a waterfowl hunter, you've gone out and you've purchased one, and you probably know that 98 cents of every dollar from the duck stamp goes to habitat conservation through the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Well, Field & Stream did a thing involving duck stamps this year, and with us here to tell you more about it is Colin Kearns, the executive editor of this fine publication. Colin, great to have you back on the air.
It's great to be back, John. Thanks.
So let's talk a little bit, before we get into this specific story, which I think is just absolutely hilarious, let's talk about Field & Stream and their relationship with the duck stamp. The duck stamp's been around since 1934.
Yeah, and Field & Stream has a really interesting and I think kind of inspiring connection to the duck stamp. One of our long time ago editors, his name was Ray Holland, started at Field & Stream in 1924, I believe, and was with the magazine for nearly 20 years. And during his tenure, he helped come up with the very idea for the duck stamp. Now, obviously, he was a hunter and a fisherman, but he was also a very hard-fighting and well-respected conservationist. And during his tenure with Field & Stream, he helped come up with this idea for a federal duck stamp. And, in 1934, we know that the Duck Stamp Act was passed, and the rest is history.
Fast forward to the present day. The competition to see who is going to have the duck stamp for any given year is hot and heavy. A lot of big names are involved with it. But John Oliver, a late night comedian, the host of Last Week Tonight on HBO, he came up with something really funny. He decided to commission an artist to enter, what was it? 4 different entries into the duck stamp contest?
It was 5 different entries into the duck stamp contest for this year. And if you haven't seen them, I recommend you go and search them out, because one is funnier than the next.
They absolutely are. I'm not going to spoil it, but let's just say one of them involves an old Nintendo game. One of them involves a classic painting. One of them is a maniacal duck about to shoot a duck hunter. That was my favorite. And there's more beyond that. So
yeah. And, the way this story kind of unfolded, I think everyone just kind of assumed that this was a funny prank or something like that, just to kind of maybe sabotage the duck stamp contest. But what it turned out to be, when none of these stamps, won the duck stamp contest, John Oliver decided to auction all 5 stamps on eBay for auction, and said he would donate all of the proceeds from the auction winnings to conservation. So all of the money raised for these stamps at auction will go to the same wetlands conservation money for normal duck stamp goes to.
And that's where Field & Stream did a thing. You actually bid on one of these stamps and paid a pretty penny to win it. Tell me how much you paid and which one you won.
We paid just a bit over $33,000, and we won the stamp that was inspired by that Nintendo video game you referenced earlier. I'll just give you the spoiler. It's a duck hunt duck stamp. And it's pretty great. The magazine that helped come up with the idea for the duck stamp, almost a century ago, as far as I know, now has purchased the most expensive duck stamp ever, and all that money is going to wetlands conservation. So it's just kind of a great feel-good story. I'm really proud to be part of this.
I think it's wonderful. I do have to ask, so where is this duck stamp picture of the Nintendo Duck Hunt going to be displayed?
Well, we haven't gotten it yet, but when Field & Stream does return to the office, we're all still working from home like I think most people are. It is going to be framed, and it is going to be hung at our office, and it's going to be a source of pride and maybe a little bit of amusement for everyone on staff, I hope for a long, long time to come.
It'll definitely bring a smile to your face. And folks, if you want to see this bit from John Oliver, just Google John Oliver duck stamp, and it'll pop up as a video you can watch. It'll take 12 minutes of your time, but I guarantee you'll, number one, be more informed about the duck stamp program, and number two, you will be laughing a lot during the course of this video. And you also wrote an article about it too that people can find where?
FieldandStream.com. Yeah, it gives you a sense of history and Field & Stream's connection to the duck stamp, but also just kind of tells you the whole kind of background and timeline behind this very bizarre but ultimately just great story about the duck stamp that John Oliver and Last Week Tonight started. So kudos to them.
Absolutely. And if you want to get all sorts of great information, the website to go to, fieldandstream.com. They've got all the great writers they had while they were in print, but now it's in digital format. So lots of free stuff there. But if you're willing to pay a little bit, you can subscribe online. How do folks do that?
You can find at the top of our homepage, there's a little nav button where you can subscribe to the digital issue of the magazine. And we've got a new issue coming out later this month, and I'm really excited about it. And like you said, it features all of our great writers. So, we're not around in print, but we're still doing plenty of great stories and exciting work to share with our readers.
All right, fieldandstream.com, folks. That's the place to go to learn more about this duck stamp and a lot about hunting, a lot about fishing, a lot about conservation. And I really would encourage you to consider a digital subscription too. Colin, always a pleasure to have you on America Outdoors Radio.
Thanks for having me, John.
Ready to step up to a quality-built rifle or shotgun that's a true classic? Check out Henry Repeating Arms, American-made. There's over 200 models to choose from in a variety of finishes and calibers for hunters and target shooters. Many of these are lever-action models with a look right out of the Old West. Don't be deceived, though. Henry Repeating Arms are modern, rugged, accurate, reliable, and have a lifetime guarantee. Find out more and order a free catalog today at henryusa.com. That's henryusa.com.
Why book at Sportsman's Cove Lodge?
Why is Alaska like no other place on Earth? It hasn't changed in thousands of years.
From the way you get here on a float plane to the way you go out with the guides and the boats, it's just a professional experience.
And I said, this is as good as it gets. I said, if you can't catch fish here, you can't catch fish anywhere.
Your experience with us will leave you speechless.
Book now at alaskasbestlodge.com.
Country hunters and anglers. You may have heard of us, but what are we about? BHA is the voice for your wild public lands, waters, and wildlife. From national level policy work to boots on the ground projects like public land cleanups, we work across North America to uphold the legacy of our public lands and waters, as well as your opportunity to hunt, fish, and recreate on them. Stand up for public lands and waters and become a BHA member today. Visit backcountryhunters.org.
Are you looking to reel in the marketing opportunity of a lifetime? Then set the hook, because we've got it right here for you. America Outdoors Radio has sponsorships available, and we offer affordable platforms to reach thousands of listeners interested in fishing, hunting, and the outdoors. Find out more by contacting John Cruz through his website at AmericaOutdoorsRadio.com. That's AmericaOutdoorsRadio.com. Hurry, though. If you wait too long, the big opportunity might just get away. AmericaOutdoorsRadio.com.
Trapping. Let's talk about this as a tradition, and let's ask a question. Is trapping going away? Is it going to be extinct in our lifetime, or is it actually seeing a revival? One person who has researched this topic and wrote an article that you can read right now in the Traditions issue of Outdoor Life is PJ Delhomme, coming at us today from Missoula, Montana. PJ, great to have you on the air.
Hey, John. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
This was really an interesting article to me. And when it comes to trapping, there's three things we need to talk about that I think drive it. So one of them are fur prices. And of course, when you're talking about prices, we're talking about supply and demand. Let's talk about, historically, everyone knows the American West was opened up because of trapping. You had fur trappers, specifically after beaver, that were making all sorts of money because there was such demand for beaver fur. But what about today? What kind of trapping's going on today, and what kind of prices are trappers getting?
Well, I'll cut through the chase for you. Trapping prices are through the floor. They're pretty bad. Not many people out there are trapping to make a living, per se, and we'll talk more about why they're trapping in a little bit. But trapping prices, they're a roller coaster, and it's been really interesting to look at the roller coaster, and as you mentioned, supply and demand, but it also is connected with geopolitics. I mean, when Russia or China are going through, when oil's high, those countries have more money, they're buying more furs. So the price of fur goes up. When these countries have a revolution or they tank or the economy takes a dive, fur prices go down as well. So they're really interestingly interconnected with what's going on around the globe, really.
Very interesting. So commercial trapping, not doing so good. Recreational trapping, we'll talk about in a second. Something else that affects trapping is just this whole bias against trapping that you see here in the United States and European countries as well. I mean, if you're wearing a fur in town, there's a good chance somebody's going to throw some fake blood at you and yell at you. And there's actually anti-trapping campaigns that show up as ballot initiatives. In fact, trapping's been banned in California and Colorado. You would think that this attitude towards trapping would have a very negative effect on trapping itself.
Yeah, you're right. And I think a lot of that legislation comes from misunderstandings and ballot initiatives. But what I'm seeing and what I found in my research is the more people are educating themselves and being educated on the topic of trapping in general, the more that they seem to understand its purpose and why it exists and why, not necessarily why people go out and do it themselves. That's another topic altogether. But the management use of trapping, whether it's predators or muskrats or beaver or whatever. I talked to my buddy Randy Newberg, and he is a CPA by trade, now a hunting personality. But he still has clients that want him to, CPA clients that want him to come out and trap a beaver because they just planted $4,000 worth of aspen on their property, and one spring or one fall, a beaver came and took them all out.
Oh, wow.
So it's really fascinating that, everybody's anti-trapping until they have a problem. And so, what you get in a lot of the, popular media is that, Fido gets caught in an illegal trap or snare and it makes headlines and everybody says, oh, this is a terrible thing. And it was a terrible thing to see Fido get killed or injured. But then again, it's like, especially if it's an illegal trap, but there are rules and regulations that trappers follow in places where trapping is completely legit and it serves a meaningful management purpose.
Well, you kind of hinted at some of that when it comes to habitat destruction by both beavers and muskrats. Certainly predator control, whether it be wolves in Idaho, where there's a robust trapping program because they have a robust population of wolves, or coyotes. You see trapping of coyotes all over the West because coyotes take out a lot of livestock, and those numbers need to be pared down too. So you're right. Trapping definitely has its place. Let's talk about recreational trapping. This was a huge surprise to me. I would have thought, given everything we just discussed in terms of bad prices and anti-trapping bias, that numbers would be way down, but they've gone up.
Yeah, and that was when I was assigned this article by Alex, my editor over there at Outdoor Life. He basically came to the table with that premise. And I said, okay, let me look at it. Let me see what happens. So I started calling around and talking with folks, and it was just the opposite. And, some people, thought it was a COVID bump. Everybody got bored. Everybody was curious. They were at home. They were on the internet and looking at YouTube videos and looking for ways in which they could pass the time outside. Hunting and fishing saw a bump too, but even trapping. Even one fellow I talked to from Idaho, he mentioned he's a hunter education instructor and a trapping instructor. His name is Bill Siebold. And he mentioned that there's some of these shows on TV now that are really putting trapping in a different light than the popular conception. Shows like Alone,
right,
where you see people who are emotional about snaring these rabbits. And, killing an animal, it should be an emotional thing. You're making meat. You're making food. You're taking one animal's life to provide for yourself. And so they're like, oh, wow, these aren't bloodthirsty killers. They're out there just, surviving, and trapping and snaring these animals is one way to go about doing it. And also there's the whole locavore movement, which is great. And even the craft movement, we got craft beers and craft this, craft that, but people are starting to take the fur and make things off of them, make things out of the fur. And he mentioned, maybe I might get $20 for a pelt, but then again, if you make something out of that pelt, maybe you get $200 for it on Etsy or whatever.
Wow. Very interesting stuff. And folks, you're going to not believe this, but PJ found out in terms of how many people are trapping today in America, that number is somewhere between 210 and 260,000 people. Way more than I ever thought. And it just goes to show that trapping is not going away. It's not going extinct. It's here to stay, and it's growing every year. PJ, well done on this article in the current edition of Outdoor Life. Folks, I would encourage you to read it. Just go to outdoorlife.com and either subscribe for the digital edition or just buy the digital edition for this month. It's the Traditions issue, and check this article out and other ones about trapping too. PJ, thanks for sharing this with us today on America Outdoors Radio.
Thanks, John.
Speaking of traditions with a lot of history, we've got to talk about our friends at Henry Repeating Arms. They've been around since 1861, making quality lever-action rifles right here in America. They started here in America. They're still made in America. And you've heard about the supply chain issues. Now is the time to buy a Henry Repeating Arms rifle if you want it under the Christmas tree. That's right. It's only October, but you better order now. And the place to go to, your first stop is henryusa.com. Once you're there, browse through the over 200 models they have available there. A lot of them, especially those Tribute Edition rifles, they are absolutely gorgeous. They're all rugged, they're all reliable, they're all accurate. I guarantee you, whoever gets a Henry from you is going to be a very happy person this Christmas. One more time, that's henryusa.com. Find a dealer near you. If you have any questions, contact the award-winning customer service staff. And don't forget to ask for your free decals and catalog, too, at henryusa.com.
Hunting and fishing are exercises in hope. Before you head into the woods, you hope to tag out on a deer you'll have to field dress. Before you make that first cast, you hope for a big fish to clean and fillet. When your hopes are realized, you'll need a sharp knife. Whether you sharpen that blade on a power sharpener in the shop or a manual sharpener in the field, WorkSharp has the tool for you. Look for WorkSharp products in sporting goods stores near you or online at WorkSharpTools.com.
Come explore the Dalles in Oregon for outdoors fun. Hike amongst the wildflowers, bike our riverfront trail, or visit the Gorge Discovery Center where you can enjoy a live raptor display, or even check out our National Neon Sign Museum. But don't forget the fishing. We've got salmon, steelhead, bass, walleye, and monster-sized sturgeon waiting just for you. When the day is done, tell those tall tales at one of our wineries, breweries, or restaurants and plan your next adventure. Find out more at explorethedalles.com.
From a bull elk ripping a bugle across the valley to wing beats on a duck marsh, public lands and waters are integral to our outdoor heritage. Become a member of Backcountry Hunters and Anglers and stand up for our public lands and waters. Visit backcountryhunters.org today.
Next up on America Outdoors Radio, we've got Lan Tani on the line. He's the president and CEO of an organization that I appreciate very much, Backcountry Hunters and Anglers. And we're going to talk today about national monuments. Lan, great to have you back.
John, it's great to be back. Happy fall.
I love fall. It is the most wonderful time of the year, that's to be sure. Hey, let's talk about 3 national monuments that just grew in size thanks to executive orders from President Biden. Which ones are they, and what's the backstory about these national monuments?
So I'll start with Staircase Escalante. That was established during the Clinton administration. Great habitat for desert bighorn sheep in Utah. Next one would be Bears Ears National Monument. That's also in Utah. That was established by Obama kind of in his waning days. And then we have an ocean one, which is the Northeast Canyon and Seamount Marine National Monument. So 3 very different ones, I would say, but great to see restored protections for them.
So where is this Marine National Monument at, and are there other national monuments that are in our oceans or lakes?
So we've got plenty of other national monuments that are out there that are on oceans in particular. This one is off the coast of California.
Interesting. Okay, so let's talk about something else here. Hunting at national monuments. I'll be honest, until I read the last Backcountry Beat newsletter from Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, I had no idea this was a thing. I thought that just like national parks, you couldn't hunt on national monuments, but I'm wrong.
You are, and that's not for every single one of them, but it's majority of them. You know, I talked about kind of Staircase Escalante, and it's just awesome desert bighorn sheep, habitat, and also provides opportunities to hunt there. You got Bears Ears, which is, turkey and elk and mule deer. And then, these ones in the marine section, the commercial fishing is banned, but recreational fishing is wide open. I just got off of this last summer, the Elbert, Missouri Breaks National Monument here in Montana. Did a bunch of fishing out of one hole, caught a pike, a goldeneye, a sauger, and a smallmouth bass. A colleague of mine this last fall shot a bighorn sheep ewe there. You go to the Rio Grande del Norte in New Mexico. Awesome spot for elk and mule deer, especially a backcountry experience. And so these opportunities, it's not, again, in every national monument, because national monuments can be like Devil's Tower in Wyoming, where it's just this, it just protects that big piece of rock. And there really isn't any hunting opportunities there. But on quite a few, you can hunt and also fish.
Very interesting indeed. And boy, oh boy, folks, you might want to check into some national monuments near you and see if hunting's open and start looking at some of those opportunities as well. Got to ask, when it comes to our national monuments, these are all created by executive orders, and they can be shrunk. Can they actually be eliminated by future presidents too? I mean, national parks, once they're established, they never go away. But our monuments, they're not necessarily as enduring, are they?
They were until the Trump administration. So the Antiquities Act, which helps create national monuments, was first signed into law by President Theodore Roosevelt. And since Roosevelt, there were 16 presidents, 8 Democrats, 8 Republicans that all expanded and used their authority to expand national monuments. And so the Trump administration was the first time and huge precedent setting that they rolled back some protections for national monuments. And so super unfortunate, but I think with the Biden administration, hopefully we're back to, this bipartisan look at protecting the best of the best.
Very interesting. Great history about our national monuments. Appreciate you sharing that. Let's turn the page and talk a little bit about backcountry hunters and anglers. We're emerging from COVID. I know that could not have helped swell the ranks, so to speak, but I've got to ask, how many members are we at now with BHA?
So we actually have just dipped a little bit. So we were at 40,000 members before COVID started. We're about 36,000 members now, which is, I think, a sign of us not being able to do events because we don't really do direct mail. We try to get people into our ranks face to face. And so still 36,000 members, though. I'm proud of that and proud of the work that they do every single day, especially during COVID. We had some huge wins, I would say, policy-wise. And then we've done a ton of work on the ground because you can be outside and doing projects, and whether that's picking up garbage, whether that's taking down fence that's in corridors, wildlife corridors, or if that's planting, sagebrush or planting, aspens and riparian zones, all that's been happening. So I've been really proud of our membership and them maintaining kind of their connection to the ground, even though it's been hard through COVID.
Well, I'll tell you what, folks, if you are into protecting and conserving our public lands, whether they be national parks or Forest Service lands or BLM lands or any other federal land, and you are a hunter or you are an angler, this is the organization for you. And Land, I would really say the strength of this organization, no offense to you, isn't necessarily from the top down. I really think it's the grassroots state and chapter events that really keep this organization going and drive a lot of enthusiasm.
No offense taken, John. And I would totally echo what you said. I think the grassroots power, and whether that's getting stuff on the ground like I just described, or when we get big policy wins out in Washington, D.C., or at a state legislative level, or with the Fish and Game Commission, that isn't because, Land Tawney showed up and said this is how it shall be. It's because our grassroots got involved and really demanded that people respect our public lands and public waters. And so that grassroots energy, BHA would be nothing without it.
Speaking of things going on in Washington, D.C., that's where you and some of your coworkers really make a difference. What's the biggest thing that you're dealing with right now?
So we're really focused on the Recovering America's Wildlife Act. Basically what this does is it gives money to our state fish and game agencies and tribal agencies to make sure that we keep common species common and other species out of the emergency room. So if you think about what we did, the Great American Outdoors Act that had the Land and Water Conservation Fund in it and the backlog of maintenance addressed, we got access pretty much done. Still a little work to do there, but now we need to do the same thing for wildlife. And so the legacy that we could leave for both game and non-game species with passage of the Recovering America's Wildlife Act would be absolutely gigantic.
Well, folks, you might want to look more into this, and this really is important because if this passes, we're going to be able to take action to conserve our species before they end up on the endangered species list, which is what we want to do. And this is one you should really reach out to your representatives and senators and ask them to support it.
Make a phone call today, right?
There you go. Last question. Had the rendezvous at Fort Missoula this year. Where's it going to be next year and when?
So we're going back to Missoula just because we did it outside this year, which that was our first time doing a rendezvous outside. So it felt more, I think it felt more like us, John, instead of being indoors in a hotel. And so we're coming back to Fort Missoula here in May. It'll be the third weekend of May. And so super excited about that. Tickets are not on sale yet, but mark your calendars off for the third weekend of May.
There you go. And if you want to find out more about not just the Rendezvous, but about the great work that Backcountry Hunters and Anglers does, and also join this wonderful organization, go to their website. That's the first step. You'll find it at backcountryhunters.org. That's backcountryhunters.org for Backcountry Hunters and Anglers. Land, it is always a pleasure, sir, to have you on America Outdoors Radio.
John, it's great to hear your voice, and I'm looking out my window and fall. We got snow falling here in Missoula right now, so I guess fall has really truly arrived when we get snow.
This portion of the show is brought to you by our friends at Worksharp. And if you are hunting this fall, you know the importance of a sharp knife. You're going to need it for gutting that animal, butchering that animal, taking the hide off that animal, and there's a good chance you're going to have to sharpen it more than once while you're doing these things in the field. That's why a pocket knife sharpener or the guided field sharpener from Worksharp are great items to have with you when you're hunting this fall. Whether you're after deer, elk, pronghorn, or bear, a sharp knife helps you get things done after you drop that animal. Look for Worksharp products at sporting goods stores, hardware stores, and ranch and home stores near you, or online, anytime at all, at WorksharpTools.com. That's WorksharpTools.com.
We love our children. We protect them. We guide them. We prepare them for life in the world. With all that we do from deep in our hearts, we cannot control all things. Life-threatening illnesses and disabilities affect far too many of our children each year. While we cannot change the circumstances, we can make dreams come true. Dreams to provide hope, to provide spiritual healing and strength, to provide moments of happiness and relief in the darkest of times. We can give a glimmer of light and hope in a time of darkness and despair. Join huntofalifetime.org to help make dreams come true, to provide hope for children with life-threatening illnesses and disabilities. Hunt of a Lifetime is a non-profit organization fulfilling dreams for hunting and fishing trips to youth 21 and under with life-threatening illnesses and disabilities. Visit huntofalifetime.org to learn how you can make a difference. That's huntofalifetime.org.
We've been telling you about Sportsman's Cove Lodge in Southeast Alaska for a while now, and there's a reason. They are the only Alaska lodge we talk about on this show. It's because they're truly Alaska's best lodge. The adventure starts with a float plane ride from Ketchikan, after which you'll get the chance to experience some of the best hospitality, food, and wonderful people you'll ever meet. Wildlife is abundant, from bears and deer to eagles and whales, and let's not forget the reason you're here, the fishing. Halibut, salmon, lingcod, rockfish, true cod, and more. It's all waiting for you in abundance at Sportsman's Cove Lodge. Book your trip today at alaskasbestlodge.com. That's alaskasbestlodge.com for Sportsman's Cove Lodge.
Hey, how'd the meeting go with Tommy's school counselor today?
Well, not exactly as planned. I think we need help.
Help? Why do we need help?
Well, I asked her about paying for college, and she said that's not something they do.
Maybe it is time to get some help. Even if Tommy just goes to state college, it's going to cost at least $25,000 a year. We'll have to rate our retirement, pay for Tommy's tuition. There's got to be a better way.
There is a better way. A way where you can pay less for college, or even receive college tuition free, regardless of your income or your student's grades. A way for you to keep your hard-earned income and savings for your future and spend less on college, while virtually eliminating the need for student loans. Get the facts about college admissions and tuition by going to tuitionprograms.org. That's tuitionprograms.org. Tuitionprograms.org. Get the facts about college admissions and tuition by going to tuitionprograms.org.
Campers, adventure seekers, hunters, and foodies. No matter the lifestyle, we can all agree on one thing. Great food and great people are worth remembering. At Camp Chef, we don't just make grills. We create each product knowing that a warm meal is always better when it's shared with those we love. Learn more about Camp Chef grills, smokers, and portable cooking equipment at campchef.com. That's campchef.com for a better way to cook outdoors.
Next up on America Outdoors Radio, some of you are going deer hunting this weekend. I know that. Some of you are going to be elk hunting soon, too. And when you tag that trophy, you're going to want to put it up on the wall. I get that. Now, one way that's really popular to do this is a European mount. And you can take it to a taxidermist and do it that way, but that's going to cost you. But guess what? You can do this at home. It's not that hard to do. And one person who has done it several times is Ryan Neely, the marketing manager for Camp Chef. Ryan, great to have you back on the air.
Hey, John. How we doing?
I am doing well. So let's say that I tag out on my deer. I take it home. I want to make a European mount. What do I need from Camp Chef to make this happen, and how do I go about doing it?
You'll need a few things. I would recommend getting, by the way, this is not something you want to do inside. So you have a stove in your house, don't do it there. You're going to stink up the house, and everybody's going to be mad at you. So Camp Chef has a lot of different stove options that are great for doing this, which we use for cooking all the time. But you might already have one for cooking that'd be great. But we have some that sit a little bit taller. They're 30,000 BTU burners, which will boil quickly. But we also have some other ones that if you're getting it specifically for European mount, I would suggest. They're high output single burner cookers, and they have 60,000 BTUs.
Oh, wow.
So they're awesome. They're made specifically for doing think of like a seafood boil or crawfish boil.
Right.
Specifically for large capacity boiling type stuff. But they work well for European mounts. The biggest thing you want to just make sure of is that your pot, whether it's on one of those stoves or the other that I mentioned, is very sturdy. You don't want that to tip over with a big, elk head. You got antlers hanging out. So just be very, very cautious with that. But I've never had any problems on the ones that I've done.
So why don't you walk us through exactly how to do this?
Yeah. You're going to want to start this process in the field. When you're field dressing the animal, or as soon as you can, you remove the head, and then you're going to want to flush the skull out. So, this is the boiling method, but it's a DIY, do-it-yourself. You're not paying a taxidermist. So you're going to save, a good handful of cash doing this. But flush out the head, so take all the skin, all the fat, all the muscle tissue off of the head. And then if possible, too, you want to take that lower jawbone off. Or you could boil it and then remove it later once you loosen that stuff up. So typically I'll flush the face, and then I will wrap the antlers in foil or something to just protect that lower part of the antler.
Sure.
Because sometimes there's still some velvet on there, or, they rub it against tree, and I kind of like to keep it in that state as much as possible. I don't want to boil that stuff off. So I'll wrap it in foil, and then I'll drop it into water, and I'll put a little bit of Dawn or some dish soap in that water. And then I'll boil it for 30 minutes or so to loosen it up, and then get a power washer. And you can do this. I've done it with and without a power washer. If you get a power washer, just be ready for some spray back. I'll usually wear some duck waders and a waterproof jacket, some goggles or something, because you'll have stuff going everywhere. But you'll just power wash the head, and that takes off a lot of stuff. And then you'll just repeat that a couple of times. So boil it for 30 minutes to an hour, power wash it, boil it, power wash it. And then eventually you'll strip all of the tissue off of the bone, and you'll have bare bone. And that's the hard part. That's the difficult part, and that will complete that process. If you're not going to power wash it, you'll just need to pick it off, get a knife and maybe some pliers, and you'll be able to pull most of that stuff out. So just keep boiling it, scrape it off, and go back and forth.
Now, I understand that you don't want to boil it too long, though, because you could actually lose, some of the nose, can't you?
Yeah, there is some, and if you're power washing, there's a lot of that, the nasal cavity, which has some real brittle bone in there. So you don't want to power wash that out. You want to be careful with that. But most of it, it'll come out, and you'll want to change the water out, too, as you boil. You might want to swap that out. But then once you do that, and you're done with that process, then is the finishing and the bleaching. So if you want, you can leave it natural if you want, or you can bleach the skull, which is what your taxidermist would do. And you can get this stuff from Sally Beauty Supply, or, just like your local hair salon store or whatever, wherever they get their beauty products. And yeah, you'll just get a bleach, and you'll want to bleach that skull. Again, tape off the antlers.
Right.
You don't want to bleach those. So tape those off and protect them, and then cover everything else in bleach. Do that overnight, rinse it off, and it'll be white and ready to go. It looks really good. And, your first time doing it can be intimidating.
Sure.
But once you get that process down, it's not too bad.
So when we're bleaching the skull, am I using like a basting brush, or am I just soaking it in a bleach water mix?
Yeah, good question. Thanks for asking. What I do is I get the bleach and I'll bleach it on the skull, and then I wrap it in cellophane, like a plastic wrap that you have in your kitchen. So I wrap it in that and just let it sit overnight. But you just want to make sure it's evenly coated, and is completely covered. And that'll help remove some of the smell too, because there is some smell left over or whatever, and that'll help remove a lot of that. It's a pretty easy process. Just boil it, remove all the flesh, either with a knife or a power washer. Repeat that process till it's done, and then bleach it up.
Well, there you go, folks. You just saved yourself a whole bunch of money, and you're going to have a mount on your wall that you're going to treasure for the rest of your life. If you want to find out more about this, go to campchef.com. They've got all sorts of blogs on all sorts of topics, and this is one of them, a DIY European mount. It'll give you all the information you just heard on how to do this. And if you're looking for anything to help you go through this, or for outdoors cooking this fall, you know where to go. That's campchef.com, or just go to a sporting goods store near you or a ranch and home store and look for Camp Chef products. You're going to have some great food when you use Camp Chef products to cook outdoors this fall. Ryan, thanks as always.
All right, thanks, John.
And now it's time for one of my favorite segments.
It's time to talk record fish.
We've got a state record to share with you from Florida, and the fish in question, it's a peacock bass. Now, I know what you're thinking. Peacock bass, those beautiful, colorful bass, they're native to South America, right? They don't belong in Florida, right? Well, it turns out Florida Fish and Wildlife actually stocked butterfly peacock bass into several Southeast Florida canals back in 1984, the only non-native fish that has been legally introduced by this state agency. As for the angler who caught this record peacock bass, that would be Felipe Prieto, who was fishing a Broward County lake after work when he hooked into this big, gorgeous bass. The bass weighed 9.11 pounds, measured 23 5/16 inches long, and beat the previous record, a peacock bass of just over 9 pounds that was caught back in 1993. Way to go, Felipe. That is one beautiful bass.
Congratulations on your new record.
Speaking of bass, I can tell you who our Monster Bass Mad Max Topwater Popper giveaway winner is. That would be Scott Edgar. He is a fishing guide in Southeast Alaska who owns Real Alaska Fishing Guides, and he's a listener who tunes into our show on our Ketchikan affiliate, KTKN AM 920 and FM 97.5. I've got to ask you, though, Scott, if you're listening today, you do live in the one state in our United States that doesn't have any bass, crappie, or bluegill that I know of. So, just what are you going to use those topwater poppers for? Inquiring minds, at least this one wants to know. Now, if I had to guess, I would say that if you saw some rockfish, maybe boiling near the surface by some kelp beds or rocks, casting one of those poppers towards those fish, that could be all sorts of fun. As for the rest of you, did you miss out on this giveaway? Well, like and follow our Facebook page at America Outdoors Radio so you don't have to miss out on our next contest, which, by the way, will be happening very soon. It's time to wrap things up, but as we do, I would like to say how pleased I am that we did so well at the Outdoor Writers Association of America Excellence in Craft Contest. Again, national organization full of outdoors media professionals, and to think that we actually almost swept the Excellence in Craft contest in the radio category. That's really something. If I got any brains at all, I'll probably stop entering at this point because I don't think I'll ever do better than this. But again, thanks goes out to the guests. They're the ones that make the show. They're the ones that are so entertaining, and I hope that you enjoyed the ones today. As for those award-winning interviews, yes, you'll be hearing those in the near future. We're going to put together a special show featuring all 4 of those first place award winners. On that note, it's time to go, but here's hoping you are blessed in the days ahead, that you stay healthy, and that you get out there to enjoy some of the wonderful opportunities that fall has to offer. After all, it is your country and you're outdoors, so get out there and enjoy it.
Hunting is conservation. At the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, we salute hunters for providing the majority of conservation funding across the U.S. Join us for our annual fundraising banquet to benefit wildlife and the mission of the RMEF.